No one expected that moment at the BET Awards. The cameras were ready for glitz, glamour, and maybe a viral dance move or two. But what they captured instead was Tyler Perry, Hollywood's quiet powerhouse, a man known for generosity, not drama, stepping up to the mic and dropping a truth bomb that sent shockwaves through the room. Without raising his voice, without naming names, he shattered the carefully crafted image Meghan Markle had built. And as his words echoed through the audience, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a speech. It was the start of a reckoning that would crack the very foundation of Meghan's brand. And no amount of PR spin could glue it back together. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle made their dramatic exit from the royal family in 2020, they weren't just giving up titles and duties, they were stepping into the unknown. No royal protection, no official residence, and no clear plan for what came next. The world watched as headlines exploded, but behind the scenes, one man quietly came to their rescue: Tyler Perry. Known for building his empire with hard work and heart, Perry did what no one else dared. He offered them sanctuary, the keys to his $18 million Beverly Hills mansion, security teams on standby, and financial support to help them land softly in their new life. To the public, it looked like a beautiful gesture, a Hollywood mogul, lending a hand to two people caught in the storm of royal fallout. But what no one saw was how that open hand became a lifeline Perry couldn't let go of, and how his generosity slowly turned into something else. As the months passed, the requests kept coming. Bills, favors, connections. And while Perry gave freely at first, he began to notice something missing: gratitude. Deals worth millions started rolling in for Harry and Meghan. Netflix, Spotify, endorsements. But despite their growing empire, there was no sign of them offering to repay, no effort to return the kindness. To Perry, what began as friendship started feeling one-sided, transactional. The weight of supporting them wasn't just financial, it was emotional, a slow drain he kept hidden from the world. But Perry's silence wouldn't last forever. And when he finally spoke out, it would send shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond. For a while, Tyler Perry kept his doubts to himself. He brushed off the whispers, convinced that helping Meghan and Harry was the right thing to do. But then came the moment that changed everything: the private jet request. According to insiders, Meghan reached out, asking if Perry's jet could fly her somewhere. She called it a simple favor, as if borrowing a private jet was no bigger a deal than borrowing sugar from a neighbor. But this time, Perry paused. It wasn't that he couldn't afford it. Perry's a billionaire mogul with his own fleet if he wanted. No, it was the principle. After all he'd given, after the home, the security, the support, the endless favors, this felt like too much. And when he gently declined, that's when, according to those close to Perry, Meghan snapped. What started as polite friendship twisted in an instant. Her reaction wasn't surprise. It was outrage. It was as if, in that moment, Perry saw the truth. This wasn't about friendship. This wasn't about gratitude. This was about what he could provide, and what happened when he finally said no. That private jet moment became the turning point. Perry began to look back at everything: the favors, the silence, the one-way loyalty, and realize how far things had gone. What he thought was generosity had turned into obligation, and what he thought was friendship had started to feel like exploitation. But Perry wasn't the only one noticing the cracks. Behind the scenes, others had started to warn him, and soon he couldn't ignore the pattern any longer. At first, Tyler Perry tried to ignore the quiet warnings. Friends, colleagues, even staff members close to him had begun to drop hints. They admired his generosity, but they saw what he couldn't, or wouldn't, admit yet. They warned him that Meghan wasn't just accepting favors. She was banking them, collecting them like chips in a high-stakes game. Every favor was another piece of social currency, another asset she could use when it suited her. And when that person was no longer useful, they'd get cut off without a second thought. For a long time, Perry pushed those whispers aside. He believed he was doing what any good friend would do, helping someone through a difficult time, offering shelter from the storm. But as time passed, those whispers started to feel louder. And as the Sussexes signed multi-million-dollar deals, with Netflix and Spotify, building a brand and a fortune, the thank yous didn't come. There were no offers to repay, no gestures to acknowledge the debt. Instead, the requests kept coming, and the gratitude stayed silent. Those close to Perry say he began to feel it, the weight of it all. The emotional drain. The realization that what started as kindness was being taken for granted. And while Perry stayed loyal for as long as he could, the cracks in the friendship had already started to show. And when Perry finally decided to speak, it wasn't just to tell his story. It was to send a message that even the most generous people have limits. When Tyler Perry took the stage at the BET Awards, no one in the audience had any idea what was about to happen. The room was filled with stars, flashing lights, and the kind of energy that comes with celebrating Black excellence. People expected heartfelt thanks, maybe a tribute to his roots or an inspiring message. Instead, what they got was something far more powerful and far more personal. Perry didn't name Meghan Markle. He didn't have to. His words painted a picture so clear that anyone who knew the backstory instantly connected the dots. He spoke about offering his home, his help, his heart, only to be used, ghosted, and left emotionally drained. His delivery was calm, measured, but every sentence hit like a sledgehammer. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was real, raw, and undeniable. The audience sat frozen, the weight of his truth hanging in the air. Perry wasn't throwing shade for attention. He wasn't seeking drama. He was telling his truth after years of silence. And what made it land even harder? This wasn't the tabloids talking. This wasn't royal gossip. This was Tyler Perry, a man known for his loyalty, generosity, and quiet strength, finally saying, "Enough is enough." And as the cameras kept rolling, the ripple effect of his words began spreading through the audience, through Hollywood, and all across the internet. Tyler Perry's speech didn't just make headlines, it triggered an instant domino effect that even Meghan's PR machine couldn't stop. Within hours of that BET Awards moment, the calls started. A producer who'd been attached to Meghan and Harry's latest Netflix pitch quietly withdrew support. Another investor, who had already sat through multiple planning meetings, backed out, calling the project too toxic to touch. This wasn't about the content of their work anymore. It was about the people behind it. For years, Meghan's name had been a magnet for platforms wanting to appear progressive, inclusive, and bold. But now, that same name had become a red flag. The perception had shifted in real time, and in an industry built on unspoken rules, mutual favors, and quiet alliances, Tyler Perry's words sent a clear signal. Aligning with Meghan and Harry could come at a cost. Suddenly, their once booming brand was surrounded by hesitation. Sponsors who had been eager to sign on began backing away. Collaborators who once scrambled to work with the couple started ghosting. Even Netflix, their biggest platform partner, reportedly began reevaluating its long-term commitment to the Sussexes, the empire Meghan and Harry had worked so hard to build, the one propped up by glossy deals, global interviews, and a carefully crafted image, was starting to crack. And as the pressure mounted, Meghan's team scrambled to, control the narrative. But their next moves would only dig the hole deeper. The morning after Tyler Perry's speech, Meghan's team hit panic mode. Phones rang nonstop, emails flew out, and damage control plans were drafted at lightning speed. The mission? Reframe the story, spin the narrative, and paint Perry as the villain. They reached out to major media outlets offering exclusive interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, and even floated the idea of a tell-all podcast where Meghan could set the record straight. But the response? Silence. Or worse, polite refusals. The problem wasn't just that the PR push fell flat. It was that it reeked of desperation. Instead of calming the storm, the scramble only fed the flames. Journalists and insiders who'd once been eager to amplify Meghan's voice now hesitated. The more her team pushed the story of Perry as bitter or out of touch, the more people started asking, what exactly are they trying so hard to hide? The efforts didn't just fail. They backfired. The public, already shocked by Perry's words, now saw a flurry of spin that felt forced and hollow. Instead of shifting sympathy back to Meghan, it made her team look like they were covering up something deeper, something uglier. And while Meghan's PR machine floundered, the real damage was happening behind closed doors, as insiders and former allies began sharing stories that no publicist could contain. As Meghan's PR team scrambled to spin the story, a wave of insider confessions started pouring out. And these weren't anonymous tabloid rumors. These were voices from people who had been inside the circle, who had seen how things really worked behind the polished image. Former staffers, consultants, and producers began sharing what they'd kept quiet for years. And what they revealed echoed the same troubling pattern: control, manipulation, and emotional leverage. One ex-assistant described working for Meghan as emotionally exhausting, where loyalty was demanded at all costs, and questioning a decision meant instant isolation. A producer who had partnered with the couple on their now-defunct Spotify deal claimed Meghan's obsession with perfection smothered every creative idea before it had a chance to breathe. She didn't want partners, they said. She wanted yes men. Even Oprah's inner circle, once seen as one of Meghan's closest Hollywood ties, quietly stepped back. There were no friendly calls, no public shows of support. The silence from Oprah's camp after Perry's speech spoke volumes. What made these stories hit so hard was that they weren't coming from gossip columns. They were coming from the very people who had tried to help, who had wanted to see Meghan succeed. And as each new voice stepped forward, the image of Meghan as the misunderstood underdog began to crack. And soon, the backlash wouldn't just tarnish her reputation. It would start shaking the very foundations of her brand. The cracks in Meghan's image weren't just showing, they were splitting wide open. What began as whispers from insiders quickly became headlines, social media threads, and viral videos. Platforms that once praised Meghan for her strength and independents were now questioning how much of her story had ever been real. Hashtags that once supported her were flooded with criticism, memes, and brutal side-by-side comparisons exposing contradictions in her narrative. Polls reflected the shift. In the US, where Meghan and Harry had once been symbols of modern royalty breaking free, support for the couple plummeted by over 30% in just a year. In the UK, where their popularity had already sunk, the fallout felt inevitable. But this time, the damage wasn't contained to public opinion. Sponsors began backing away quietly, not wanting to risk their brands. Potential collaborators ghosted meetings, and the deals that once seemed endless were now surrounded by hesitation and second thoughts. Inside Archewell, the impact was immediate. Sources revealed that internal projects were paused, budgets were reviewed weekly, and planned hires were frozen. The empire that had seemed unstoppable was now in full damage control. But the damage was spreading too fast to contain, and through it all, Harry remained largely silent. Some say he was working behind the scenes, trying to salvage what little trust was left. Others believe he was simply burned out, watching the walls of their brand crumble around them. And as Meghan's carefully crafted identity began to unravel, one thing became clear: the world was no longer buying the fairy tale. Tyler Perry's speech didn't need to be loud or dramatic. Its quiet honesty made it all the more devastating. In just a few minutes, He didn't just expose one moment of betrayal. He exposed a pattern that so many had suspected, but few had dared to speak about. And in a world where reputation is everything, Meghan Markle learned the hard way that even royalty can face exile twice. Once from the crown, and now from the culture that had once embraced her. What started as a fairy tale of empowerment, independence, and reinvention had shattered before the world's eyes. The woman who was once seen as the symbol of strength against the monarchy now found herself isolated, her allies silent, her brand collapsing under the weight of the truth. And as the dust settles, one question lingers. Was the fairy tale ever real, or was it always just smoke and mirrors? But what do you think? Was Tyler Perry right to break his silence, or did he go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to hear where you stand on this. And if you want to stay updated on the twists and turns of stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what comes next.